Hello, my name is Landis Fields, and I'm the designer and modeler of the animation mentor mech called Hatch. So let's start by taking a look at the final design. When I was first starting to think about the mech, I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want it to have guns and missile launchers and all that stuff on it. I was cool with it having a military look, kind of like this green, olive drab, or like a brown, earthy type tone, but I definitely didn't want it to be a combatant kind of military thing that was aggressive. One of the reasons that I didn't want that wasn't just because you see a lot of that these days, but also because I wanted something playful and fun and appropriate for the students to put on their reel. So along those lines, knowing that this would also be used to learn with, I wanted to introduce some elements into the design that would be fun and challenging to work with. Things like these drums on the back that are floating forms that can be used as secondary animation, cables and tie-down hardware, and even a little bit of asymmetry on the nose. And while it has a strong silhouette, there is a lot of information that can quickly get muddy, so it would force the students to keep track of all those limbs and how it can make or break the way the pose reads. So let's take a look at one of the first designs that I showed Ben. So this was the very first design that I had done of the Animation Mentor mech. You can see right out of the gate that I'm already trying to incorporate some of those elements that would be fun for animators to work with, such as cables, antennas. I've got some little tie-down things here that could have some nice little secondary animation. Some of that stuff might be automated through the rig, but I wanted to give enough ingredients here so that the instructors could dial it up or down based on what type of curriculum they were teaching. So looking at this early image, one of the first things that I wanted to get across was that this device belongs to someone in some world, that there is actually a pilot that gets up every morning and drives this thing on a farm. That term is often referred to as a lived-in universe, and all that means is everything isn't brand new. Things are banged up, panels get scratched, and even something as simple as this "how's my driving" on the back panel here, that's something that the pilot could have wrote one day as a joke to another guy that was on the farm. This is also an opportunity to incorporate some things like the Animation Mentor logo on the stencil here, but also help kind of support the story of the fact that this belongs to a farm, this whole fueling change, because it's a biofuel unit. Another thing that I like to come up with, and this is just kind of fun, but I like to use acronyms from my time in the military, so I liked the acronym FARM because it's supposed to be a piece of farm equipment, but I also made that biofarm unit tie into Biofuel Agricultural Recovery Mech. I just thought that was kind of cool. And this stuff, a lot of these things that you're seeing visually here, I actually came up with those on paper way before I even started designing anything. So back to that whole idea of a lived-in universe, I wanted to make it feel like someone does use it. And you can see even in this paint over texture that I've already got some rust in here, and that's nothing near the level that Aaron ended up taking it, but you can already see that I'm suggesting like this cable line rubs up against here when this thing walks, and it creates this scratch which ends up getting rusted through weather. But also there's things like in the form, not just the paint of the texture in that, you can see there's some canisters here that maybe this is a lunchbox, maybe it's a toolbox, but the pilot has some kind of interaction with this device, and you can see that's only on one side. It's asymmetrical. Maybe you've got this headlight here, but then these are some kind of cameras that record. You've also got this little smokestack here that contrasts with the cool antennas on the right. So this is the kind of stuff that you see in the real world. It's not all a symmetrical thing that's been mirrored over, but it's got that human touch to it. So on this initial design, you can see I had these like harvester kind of hand things that I was going with, and I intentionally wanted to avoid hands, but when I was working with Ben, we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe it would be better to have some kind of hands to pose, not real literal hands, but some kind of appendages that maybe this thing could grab with, and something that the pilot could use to interact with things outside of the cabin. And let's be honest, it would make for really cool poses by the animators, but we definitely wanted to try this route first and then go the route of adding some type of appendages. So with that in mind, here was the second version that we showed. So here you can see we've done a couple things. One, the main one that you see is we changed the color because we thought maybe that green felt a little bit too military. Even though it didn't have guns on it, you see that and you instantly think military. Another thing we did is you can see we put the hands on here, but I also wanted to keep those harvester guides, these things with the holes in them. I thought that felt kind of farm and just something a little bit different than just having hands on the front. I also went in here and I tightened up the silhouette. So on the other one, there was a pose I had just kind of put in there. But on this one, I just kind of tightened up some of the panels, brought everything together and a little bit closer, and I'm starting to give a little bit more of an indication of where maybe some of the drips and rust, just playing with ideas so that Aaron can kind of get some feedback before he even starts texturing. So at this point we started to feel pretty good about the concept. And because I used 3D to design with, we already had a good start on the model. And I also happened to try to keep it clean as much as possible, especially with this one. We had a very tight deadline, so we really didn't have a lot of time for me to go in and make something sloppy and clean it up. There was a lot of stuff that Jay came in and started laying out all the UVs. There was a ton of pieces in here that he went through and named everything, fixed a little bit of the stuff on the windows and that, because in this version you can see we don't even have any glass in here, just see right through to the pilot. And we knew that we were going to eventually end up using something that did have glass that was kind of a little bit dirty and grungy so that you couldn't see through to a pilot. That way they had the option to either put a pilot in there or not. So here we have the final design and model. And one of the nice things about doing 3D concept art is when you're done with an approved concept, you have a finished model. Sometimes when you're in a pinch, you might kit bash and use other pieces that might not be clean for production ready modeling. In this case, I already kept it clean, and the only pieces that I actually did have that we had to clean up was these pipes, and these fittings were pretty dirty, but that was enough to get them to go through rendering phase and just kind of get an idea across in those earlier concepts I showed you. But for the most part, we were up and running. Jay went in there and put the glass windows in there, which is really nice. It gives a canvas to Aaron for him to put some nice paint on, and also something that we could kind of dirty up and hide where the pilot would or would not be, depending on what they want to do for the curriculum. But for the most part, it's pretty cool. One of the things that I really like is this tie-down piece here. This goes kind of back to that lived-in universe. I like this whole idea that this kind of maybe holds that steady so that it doesn't shake around a lot when it's walking through the crops and that. But it just makes it feel a little bit more cohesive. And some of these panels are open, not all of them are closed. You can see this asymmetry here on the front, that camera lens we were talking about. And even these vents, these two big intakes here are symmetrical. However, if you look, one of them's got a hole punched in them. I think that was kind of cool. And these little things that I'm adding in here really help. They all add up to make it feel a little bit more believable. You can even see from the top view here, this hose isn't on both sides, it's just on one. Same goes for back here. If you look at these cables and wires that go up to the back of this motor, they all aren't the same. You've got this one corrugated hose and then a couple other ones and a small one. And I like the tail lights in the back here. I thought that would be kind of cool. In the render I only showed the front one lit, but I thought it'd be kind of cool that these ones could light up too in the back if the guy had to back up and use the mirrors to see. One of the things that I think is cool too is I really like the feet. Feet are kind of something with mechs. You always see a similar kind of foot that has these two-toe kind of thing. I mean, we did end up putting toes in here in the end, just so that I could have something when it lifts off to plant, and that was really important for to teach the animators. But for this one, I wanted to have this like stump thing. I wanted to try out these kind of like forked, like scissor feet kind of thing, and I thought it was really successful in the end. But you can see it's something that right off the bat when you see it, you want to see it moving. Most of the people that I would show it to, they would instantly say, man, I can't wait to see what the animators do with that. So with that, I'll leave it up to you to come up with something really cool using the new Animation Mentor Mech Hatch.